Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Phobase Care webinar series under the Patient Support Program. The topic for our webinar today is precision oncology and its role in cancer treatment. Thank you for taking your time on the weekend and joining us today. I am Meghna Muskan. I am the genetic counselor practicing at Phobase Care, and I specialize in cancer genetics. And joining me today in bringing this exciting and informative webinar to all of you is an eminent speaker, Dr. Bhuvan Chugh. Dr. Bhuvan Chugh is a medical and hemato-oncologist with over 13 years of experience in the field of oncology. He is currently specializing as a consultant at Max Healthcare Facility in Gurgaon. He specializes in organ-specific treatment and the treatment of lymphomas and solid tumors. He has served as an associate consultant in Army Base Hospital, Delhi, and PGIMS in Rohtak. He obtained the MBBS from Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Health Sciences in Karnataka in 2006. He has done his DNB in general medicine from Army Base Hospital in Delhi in 2012 and his DNB in medical oncology from Medanta, the Medicity in Gurgaon in 2017. He was awarded a medal in the C4 Challenging Care Capsules in Cancer in 2018. He serves as a member of the Indian Cooperative Oncology Network, or ICON, and the member of European Society for Medical Oncology, or ESMO. Dr. Chugh has been an active part of the faculty, both in terms of clinical and research work. He has co-authored several chapters, papers, and abstracts in various national and international journals and conferences. Dr. Chugh is an experienced, skilled, and awarded doctor in his field of specialization. About today's webinar, precision oncology can be defined as the molecular profiling of tumors to identify targetable alterations. It is rapidly growing and has entered the mainstream of clinical practice. Precision oncology is an innovative approach to cancer treatment that ensures your treatment is specifically designed and targeted to your unique form of cancer. The emergence of this kind of targeted treatment is an exciting moment in the battle against cancer. Precision oncology has made progress in leaps and bounds in the recent years and is currently at the heart of revolutionizing cancer research. I think Dr. Bhuvan Chugh would be a better person to introduce you to the field of precision oncology and take us through this journey. Dr. Bhuvan, please take over.
Thank you, Meghna, and thank you, Phobase Care, for inviting me for this patient support webinar. And it is indeed a pleasure to to come over here and on this podium and speak about it. And I think you rightly said, the way we are treating cancer is no more based on the generic chemotherapy, and we are treating chemotherapy, and we are treating each patient cancer as individual cancer. And there's much to learn about the disease when we start treating the cancer, and each patient has to be picked up, his cancer evaluated, and then treated according to the type of cancer which we are dealing with, not only in terms of where it started from or what type of cancer it is, but also in terms of what genes make up the entire cancer and what genes can be targeted in that. I think जो cancer का treatment है वो I think it has changed leaps and bounds over the last 5 years. जब से NGS आया है तो तब से जो treatment करने का तरीका है और जो treatment करने के drugs हैं वो काफी बदल गए हैं पहले से, and they become less toxic, they become very specific, and we start जब भी हमको drug चुनते हैं या drug, whenever we give some drug, it has to be backed by the genetic evidence for it. We always look at the genes of the DNA, we always look at the genes of the cancer and look, we always assess whether it is going to be working or not. Is there anything else which can be done? कोई और drug है जो दिया जा सकता है? So I'll just start with a small presentation, and from there we'll build upon, and obviously we would like to have a discussion. We'll जितने भी questions हैं वो last में लेना चाहेंगे हम, and I think we will encourage discussion and we will encourage questions. We are open to it. And purpose of this support webinar is कि जो भी किसी को doubt है या जो भी कोई बात करना चाहते हैं हमसे about how better उनका cancer manage किया जा सकता है या कुछ और हो सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता है. So not that we are best in the field, but then yes, we do what is supposed to be done. हम वो सब करते हैं जो कि किया जाना चाहिए. So I'll just start with sharing my screen. So this is where we are. I think personalization of cancer therapy is the new norm. No cancer, चाहे जैसे दो. So before we begin, generally मेरा मानना ये है कि कैंसर को समझने के लिए तीन चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट होती हैं. कि कैंसर का नाम क्या है, क्योंकि सर से लेके पांव तक किसी भी जगह का कैंसर किया हो सकता है. तो समझना जरूरी है किसी भी इंसान के लिए कि कैंसर शुरू कहाँ से हुआ है. हमारी भाषा में उसको बोलते हैं कि प्राइमरी साइट कहाँ है. सो सपोज किसी को ब्रेस्ट का कैंसर है तो उसका प्राइमरी साइट ब्रेस्ट माना जाएगा, चाहे वो कहीं मर्जी गया हो, चाहे वो लिवर में चला गया हो, चाहे वो बोन्स में चला गया हो, मगर उसका प्राइमरी साइट कैंसर विल बी कॉल्ड एज अ कैंसर ऑफ द ब्रेस्ट. उसके बाद होता है नाम के अंदर दूसरा जो द सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ द नेम इज द टाइप ऑफ द कैंसर वी आर डीलिंग विद, बिकॉज ईच ऑर्गन हैज अ टेंडेंसी टू गिव राइज टू मल्टीपल टाइप्स ऑफ कैंसर. For example, somebody has a lung cancer, they can have adenocarcinoma or squamous, it is multiple types. So the second part of the name is the type of the cancer it is. So for somebody who has a lung cancer, the primary site will be lung, and then there'll be a typing of the cancer, which most commonly in the case of lung is adenocarcinoma. And then there are further subtypes to it, which obviously is not this is not the podium to discuss for it. The second part to understand the stage of the second part to understand the cancer is the stage of the disease. And so stage of the disease is from stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the four general stages of the cancer. 1 and 2 are generally the early stage. Stage 3 is the locally advanced stage, and stage 4 is the metastatic stage, or the stage where it is spread into the blood. And the third part to understand the cancer is how fit is the patient who's being supposed to be treated. So all these three are important once you talk about treatment of cancer, because somebody who's 20 years of age and has a breast cancer, which is stage 3, will not be treated same as somebody who's 80 years of age has a breast cancer and stage 3. So, it's all three are equally important when it comes to treating the cancer. And that's how I start treating the cancer. That's how I understand the cancer. कि कैंसर को समझना जरूरी है कि उसका नाम क्या है, उसकी स्टेज क्या है और मरीज की फिटनेस क्या है. And all these three things are necessary जब भी आप किसी का कैंसर ट्रीटमेंट शुरू करें. अब है क्या ये तीनों चीजें, obviously somebody who's let's say somebody who's 50 years of age and has a stage 3 breast cancer which is HER2 positive. अब how do you make a difference कि ये दो इंसान जिनको सेम ब्रेस्ट कैंसर है, सेम स्टेज का है, सेम टाइप का है, क्या उन दोनों में भी फर्क है? So the answer is yes. There is a genetic makeup of the cancer is where the difference comes in, and the response to therapy is obviously determined by the genetic or the genes which make up the cancer. So this is where the precision medicine or personalization of cancer therapy comes in.
I'm sorry to disturb you. Are you moving the slides?
No,
I mean,
I'm
is
not.
the presentation going?
I'm not moving the slides.
Just check. Thank you. Please go on.
So ये जरूरी है पता करना कि जब भी हम बात करते हैं कैंसर की, तो क्या फर्क है दो सिमिलर टाइप के कैंसर में. अगर पेशेंट 60 years का है, उसको if somebody has a 60 years of age has an adenocarcinoma lung and which is of stage 4, how different it is between the two patients who have the same cancer. So that's where the personalization of cancer therapy comes in, and that's where the precision medicine comes in. So to precisely know what type of cancer you're dealing with will require to precisely know what genes are involved in the cancer. And to precisely treat that genes of the cancer, you need to obviously spread out the DNA of the patient, or spread out the DNA of the cancer and look which genes are particularly affected. And so moving on, I'll start with the first slide. As it is said that the cancer is a disease of the genome. Why is it said is because everything in the cancer starts at the level of cell, and everything in the level of cell starts at the level of DNA. So that's where the cancer starts. Something has to go wrong in the cell for it to proliferate uncontrolled or unchecked growth. So एक normal cell जीता है, बड़ा होता है, मर जाता है, but for a cancer cell वो जीता है और वो जिया ही चला जाता है. So I think that's the for that to happen there has to be something wrong with the cell. वो सेल रॉन्ग क्या होता है कि उसके अंदर देयर आर 7 to 8 जर्नल चेक पॉइंट्स होते हैं एक सेल की जिंदगी और उसकी मौत में, एंड ऑल दोज हैव टू गो रॉन्ग फॉर अ कैंसर टू डेवलप. एंड ये सारे जो चीजें गलत हो रही हैं और ये सारी चीजें थिंग्स हैव टू गो रॉन्ग, दे गो रॉन्ग एट द लेवल ऑफ डीएनए. And what exactly goes wrong at the level of DNA is what goes wrong in the genes, because DNA is nothing but genes put together. So genes is nothing but the code of the DNA. It's 80. I don't think we need to go there, but what we need to basically understand is cancer starts at the level of cell, and obviously something has to go wrong at the level the cell has. उसका जो basis होगा, origin होगा, वो at the level of DNA होगा. So आपकी जो genes में कुछ ना कुछ बदलाव आएगा, उसमें कुछ बदलाव को हमारी भाषा में म्यूटेशन कहते हैं. So उनमें कुछ ना कुछ mutations आएंगी which will lead to जो आपका cell का अनकंट्रोल ग्रोथ होगा, उसके ऊपर जो जितने भी मैकेनिज्म्स थे उनकी, उसके ऊपर जितने भी जो इफेक्ट थे जो उसको खत्म कर सकते थे, जो उसको मार सकते थे, वो खत्म हो जाएंगे. सो दिस इज व्हाट इट इज. यही कहानी कही जा रही है यहाँ पे कि कैंसर जो हो रहा है वो अनकंट्रोलेबल ग्रोथ है, और अनकंट्रोलेबल ग्रोथ जब होगी तो वो आसपास की जगहों में जाएगी. So this is what it is. Cancer is a disease caused by cells which are dividing uncontrollably and spreading into surrounding tissue. And it's caused by the changes to the DNA, and obviously DNA change occurs in the level of certain DNAs which are called as genes. So if somebody asks me in a very simple sense कि cancer होता क्यों है, yes, there is a genetic change to it, and genes are the basis of cancer. We will obviously talk about कि जो genes में changes आ रहा है, ये genes में changes is it because ये क्या आपके ऊपर से family से आया है कि आप में हुआ है? So that is तो उससे कंफ्यूज ना करें जेनेटिक चेंज को. जेनेटिक चेंज मींस आपके जीन्स का चेंज, जो आपके माता पिता से आपको मिला है या जो आप अपने बच्चों को देंगे, उसको हमारी भाषा में हेरिडेटरी कहते हैं. सो देयर इज अ क्लियर डिमार्केशन बिटवीन द genetic changes and hereditary changes. Hereditary is something which you pass on to the family in your family line. Genetic is something which you obviously happens in your genes. So अब how has the decision changed or how has the treatment changes? There is a current care. जो पहले ट्रीटमेंट क्या होता था कि किसी को सपोज पैनक्रियाटिक कैंसर है या किसी को कोई भी कैंसर है, उसको एक तरह की थेरेपी दे दी जाती थी जिसका एक रिस्पॉन्स रेट होता था. आमतौर पे कोई भी कीमोथेरेपी का रिस्पॉन्स रेट अराउंड 45 to 50% होता है. ये मतलब जो हमारी स्टडीज में आई है कि मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स द थेरेपी द रिस्पॉन्स रेट इज अराउंड 40 to 45 to 50%. एंड when we talk about response rate, मतलब आपका कैंसर जो छोटा होगा या कम होगा. सो हम ये बात कर रहे हैं मेटास्टेटिक कैंसर की, जो कि स्टेज 4 कैंसर होता है, क्योंकि उससे पहले जो कैंसर्स होते हैं वो जनरली उसमें सर्जरी इन्वॉल्व होती है, उसमें रेडिएशन इन्वॉल्व होती है. उसके अंदर भी कीमोथेरेपी का रोल है. हर तरह में कीमोथेरेपी का रोल है. उसमें कीमोथेरेपी का रोल उस टाइम पे ये है कि वापस ना आए कैंसर. उसके भी अपने परसेंटेजेस हैं जो वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड अबाउट दोज. बट हम अभी सपोज हम बात करते हैं किसी का कैंसर फैला हुआ है और हम उसको कीमोथेरेपी दे रहे हैं, एंड वी हैव स्टार्टेड द थेरेपी. द जनरल रिस्पांस रेट अराउंड 45 to 50%. इन 45 to 50% में कुछ ना कुछ इफेक्ट आएगा. हो सकता है 10 से 15% लोगों में 10% लोगों में कैंसर दिखना बंद हो जाए. बाकी 35 से 40% लोगों में कैंसर छोटा होगा. कुछ 15 से 20% लोगों में कैंसर वैसे का वैसे रहेगा, जिसको हमारी भाषा में स्टेबल डिजीज कहा जाता है. और लगभग 30 से 35% में कैंसर बढ़ता चला जाएगा despite whatever treatment you are taking. So those are called as a progressive disease. So what we mean by this is, so if somebody is being treated with it, there is a partial response or a complete response, there is a stable disease, and then there is a progressive disease. Now how we have changed it is, what we do is we analyze the tumor DNA. जो आपका ट्यूमर है उसका टिश्यू निकाला जाता है. We spread it out, and we have with the next generation sequencing coming in, it's easier to sequence the tumor DNA even further. आप ट्यूमर डीएनए लेते हैं, आप ब्लड को लेते हैं, आप आपके जहां पे कैंसर के सेल हो सकते हैं, जहां पे भी कैंसर के जो ट्यूमर डीएनए है, जो ट्यूमर है वो कहीं भी किसी भी फ्लूइड में हो सकता है, आप उसको लेते हैं, आप उसको पढ़ाई करते हैं. सपोज किसी ब्रेस्ट कैंसर के पेशेंट को इफ समबडी हैज अ ब्रेन में स्लेप्टोमेनिंजेस है, जो आपका सीएसएफ है, जो कि ब्रेन के अराउंड फ्लूइड होता है. इफ देयर इज अ सर्कुलेटिंग ट्यूमर डीएनए वहां पे है, या वहां पे कुछ ट्यूमर के डीएनए है और कहीं शरीर में नहीं है, तो मैं वो सीएसएफ फ्लूइड लूंगा. एंड व्हाट वील डू इज वील स्टडी द सर्कुलेटिंग ट्यूमर डीएनए, और विल स्टडी द जो सेल्स हैं आपके, सपोज का आपके कहीं लिवर में ट्यूमर पड़ा है, वहां से हमने एक ट्यूमर का डीएनए लिया एंड देन उसका हमने स्टडी किया. उस स्टडी के बेसिस पे whatever genes are affected, those genes are targeted specifically by the drugs which particularly hit the particular genetic change which we are talking about. So I'll give you an example. This will be followed by a small case presentation where I'll tell you how difficult cases are managed in today's world, and that's just an example. There are much more difficult cases. There's a lengthier discussion which happened between all of us colleagues when we are trying to manage a difficult case. But then it's always exciting when when you're stuck with the problem and then you find out a solution to a problem, and that too using the latest technology which is there in the world. It's always exciting. So what you talk about today's world is precision oncology is when you precisely hit the genetic change which is driving the cancer forward. So by driving the cancer forward, we mean there are whenever you talk about cancer, अब मैंने जैसे आपको बताया कि there are genetic changes in it. जीन्स में origin cancer का जीन्स में ही है. अब कुछ जेनेटिक चेंज होते हैं जिनको हम ड्राइवर म्यूटेशंस कहते हैं, जिनको हम ये कहते हैं कि वो म्यूटेशन है जो कि कैंसर को आगे चला रही है या ड्राइव कर रही है. And there are certain mutations which are called as a passenger mutations. Passenger mutations are the mutations which are just there but they're not driving the cancer forward. So जरूरी होता है कि जब आप NGS करें तो किसी ना किसी जेडिस से या somebody who is expert in it उससे बात करें कि क्या उनको लग रहा है कि ये जीन जो है अपने आप में the genetic change or the mutation, is it a genetic driver mutation or is it just a passenger mutation? And अगर वो जेनेटिक ड्राइवर म्यूटेशन है तो उसको हिट किया जाए. वॉट एवर द ड्रग्स विच आर अवेलेबल, देयर आर ट्रायल्स अवेलेबल, देयर आर ड्रग्स अवेलेबल जो हर अपनी तरह से हर एक जेनेटिक चेंज को हिट कर सकती हैं. एंड देन यू ड्राइव फर्दर. उससे होता क्या है कि जो अनटुवर्ड इफेक्ट हैं, जो साइड इफेक्ट हैं, वो कम होते हैं क्योंकि आप अपनी तरह से एक स्पेसिफिक थेरेपी दे रहे हैं टू हिट दैट पर्टिकुलर जीन. एंड द सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ इट इज आप जो आपका रिस्पॉन्स है वो बेटर होता है बिकॉज आप हिट कर रहे हैं उस ड्राइवर म्यूटेशन को जो कि कैंसर को आगे चल रहा है. So that is the advantage of it. There are, it leads to lesser side effects and it leads to better response rates. That's what it is. So moving forward, आज की डेट में if somebody is especially in a stage 4 disease and especially in a disease जहाँ पे वो advanced है, I think most of the oncologists या जितने भी cancer specialists हैं, if you look at anybody who's a medical oncologist and who's practicing in Delhi NCR, I think we routinely take the support of the next generation sequencing. For example, 4Base Care is excellent company. When we send our samples, they look at the DNA, they look at the RNA, and they kind of study the RNA and DNAs and they get back to us that this is the mutation which we think ki isme involve ho sakti hai, and I think this is where you should hit. So coming back to it, how is it difference? Well, gone are the days जब one size fits all. अगर किसी को lung cancer है तो उसको ये 2 दवा दे दो, किसी को pancreatic cancer है तो ये 2 दवा दे दो. वो ज़माना अब है नहीं. That's not there anymore. So therapy is personalized for each patient. Each patient is studied in detail. Each patient is spoken about in detail. You study the cancer of each patient and then you decide accordingly. अब हर जो प्राइमरी साइट है वो फर्दर सब टाइप में डिवाइड होती है डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द जीनोम जो हिट कर रहा है, जो पार्ट ऑफ कैंसर, जो पार्ट ऑफ जीन जो है वो कैसे डिवाइड कर रहा है उससे. सो फॉर एग्जांपल ब्रेस्ट कैंसर, आज के ब्रेस्ट कैंसर को हम जेनेटिक बेसिस पे ल्यूमिनल ए, ल्यूमिनल बी, HER2 एनरिच, ट्रिपल नेगेटिव को फर्दर वी डिवाइड इनटू AR रिसेप्टर, मतलब AR रिच, मेसेंकाइमल. सो देयर आर मल्टीपल थिंग्स टू इट. सो ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ जेनेटिक चेंजेस आप डिजीज का प्रोग्नोसिस एंड डिजीज का ट्रीटमेंट दोनों को ही यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड इट बेटर एंड यू कैन ड्राइव इट बेटर. सो ये सारी कहानी, इट्स ऑल स्टार्टेड विद लंग कैंसर एंड आई थिंक वी हैव मूव्ड एंड सो देयर इज अ रिमार्केबल चेंज इन द ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ लंग कैंसर. आज से 5 साल पहले 2015 या 2016 में ऑस्टन सर्वाइवल जो लंग कैंसर मेटास्टेटिक स्टेज 4 का होता था वो लगभग 12 से 13 महीने होता था, और आज की डेट में 25% लोग लंग कैंसर मेटास्टेटिक वाले 5 साल से ज्यादा जीते हैं. So it has only been possible because it was found that the mutations in the lung cancer they are targetable mutations. अब वो ड्राइवर म्यूटेशंस हैं जिनको जो कैंसर को ड्राइव आगे कर रही हैं उनको टारगेट किया जा सकता है. So similarly in every cancer type there are inroads to it. There are genetic inroads to every cancer type which can be targeted. So as I just told you, there is all cancer type. There is breast में there are multiple cancer types which you can analyze based on the NGS. And in the lung, where it all started is where it is lung. And when it comes to pancreas, I think it's a very interesting story because pancreatic cancer per se has been a very very chemo-resistant cancer. होता क्या है कि जो cancer, pancreatic cancer है, that has a lot of mucin to it, that has a lot of thick liquid around it, the pancreatic cells. So chemotherapy, the standard cytotoxic chemotherapy, find it very difficult for themselves to enter into the pancreas and act on the pancreatic cells. Now what happens is when you look at the next generation sequencing, and when you look at the the genetic makeup of the pancreatic cancer, you are able to find certain drugs which are able to create magic, and I'll show you one of those cases. So coming to the stomach cancer, there is a HER2 gene, the way HER2 is amplified, how it is targeted. I think that has changed a lot. And then same with the story. So I'm just giving an example. So this list is not exhaustive. This list is just a start of it, and it's just to it's just a representative list to show that in every cancer type, even in hematological cancers, NGS has a greater and greater role to play. And so how has life changes? Even 2 years back, we would use NGS in third or fourth line of chemotherapy. जब आपका chemotherapy, पहला line आपने दिया, fail कर गया, दूसरा line दिया, फिर fail कर गया, and you have given a third line of third line of treatment, and then it has failed, and when you have nothing left, that is the time you would bring in the NGS and see if there is something targetable or not. Now what we have done is, now we have started bringing NGS earlier and earlier. Now somebody who comes to me with the first line of palliative chemotherapy, I would like to do an NGS and to understand the disease better. How it will help me understand the disease better is, I will know which drugs are more likely to be effective and which drugs are less likely to be effective. For somebody who's triple negative breast cancer hai kisi ko, and they have relapsed after a short while of completing the chemotherapy, I will obviously just to give you an example, I have there are example of आप या तो eribulin chemotherapy दे सकते हैं, या you can give a gemcitabine carboplatin. What I would want to do is I would want to send a NGS and see if the patient has a BRCA to their tumor. उसमें कुछ ना कुछ ऐसे genes हैं जिनको मैं hit कर सकता हूँ, and then if the MSI is high, if the PD-L1 is high, if the tumor mutation burden is high, I would like to add immunotherapy to it. How will that help? Well, if it works, and it works in around 15 to 25% patient, it'll give you a long-term survival. Patient may live for 2.5, 3 years, without a hitch on immunotherapy, which would have been really difficult had it not been for this immunotherapy in such a patient. Now we routinely, today only I sent a patient, I sent a liquid sample for a liquid biopsy for a foundation, and I liquid biopsy भेजा उसके tumor DNA के लिए, and I sent a CSF for a CSF circulating tumor DNA. So you're trying to hit, and you're trying to find where all you can hit the target. So I'll just give you a small example. So I had a 61-year-old female, a retired IFS officer, well-educated female, a very smart lady. She came to me with, she is a known case of diabetes, and she presented to us with jaundice, and she had certain fevers. Generally, this is suggestive of cholangitis, is something it is. So she got admitted in gastroenterology, GI department में admit हुई थी. And so MRI was done, and it was suggestive of if I've just tried to highlight this, there was a huge pancreatic head mass which was there in the MRI. So it was a partly solid cystic mass. I don't think for a patient education we need to know this, but then it was a large mass in the head of the pancreas which was unresectable, and it was abutting सारी veins को abut कर रहा था. तो generally pancreatic cancers को मोटा मोटी 3 भाग में बांटा जाता है कि is it early pancreatic cancer, it is a locally advanced pancreatic cancer, it is a metastatic pancreatic cancer. So early pancreatic cancer is generally operable, and a locally advanced is either a borderline operable, या borderline as in वो operable हो भी सकते हैं और नहीं भी हो सकते हैं, और unresectable. So this looked like an unresectable cancer to begin with. इसका operation नहीं हो सकता था. वो क्यों नहीं हो सकता था? क्योंकि it was abutting all the vessels along it. Just I've tried to mark it with the arrows कि जहाँ जहाँ इनका वो cancer था. Again, so if you look at it had involvement of the arteries was there. So artery wall थी उसकी, so it was almost abutting the artery. Similarly, if you look at the origin of the artery, वो भी abut कर रहा था. So it was inoperable cancer to begin with. And हमने क्या किया कि हमने उसका obviously pancreatic cancer में एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम आती है कि उनकी बायोप्सी करनी मुश्किल होती है, क्योंकि डीप होते हैं, रेट्रोपेरिटोनियम होते हैं, एब्डोमेन के पिछले तरफ होते हैं. तो उसका एंडोस्कोपिक अल्ट्रासाउंड किया, और उसमें एक टिश्यू वी पुट इन अ निडल, एंड इट टर्न्ड आउट टू बी स्क्वामस सेल कार्सिनोमा. नाउ pancreatic cancers are more commonly adenocarcinomas, but for us also it was a surprise that we found a squamous cell carcinoma. Histopathology हमने दोबारा when it's something rare, you always want to cross check. So we did a cell block, and there was again it showed squamous cell carcinoma with a possibility of it may be adenosquamous, but then there is a squamous cell carcinoma component to it. Because she had presented to us in jaundice, we put a stent, and जब stent डाला गया, the purpose of stent was because pancreatic के जो head cancers होते हैं वो generally जो bile duct होती है आपकी उसको दबा रहे होते हैं. So we put in a stent in the common bile duct, and the bilirubin started coming down. And then because she had cancer, she was transferred to oncology services. हमने जब PET CT कराया तो I'll just show you, there was this huge lesion in the pancreatic head जो एकदम fiery yellow lesion है, that's the pancreatic head cancer. And साथ में जो this is the stent which has been placed next to it. So because इतना ज़्यादा it was a large tumor, unresectable, तो we obviously had a tumor board discussion. Inoperable cancer था, and तो आज के ज़माने में we obviously we started her on a standard chemotherapy of gemcitabine nab-paclitaxel, जो कि एक standard chemotherapy है whichever you give to pancreatic cancer. Now the thing is, she was a squamous cell carcinoma, so you choose something which is more likely to work in a squamous cell carcinoma. That is the first personalization which you do. But then that's a very crude personalization. That's not exactly a personalization, that's a logical step which you take. So again, it was an atypical case, a rare histology thi adenosquamous ki. So we thought, why not just send the NGS to begin with only? Because I think that will help us identify if there is something which we can hit. So हमने उसको जब 3 cycle chemotherapy दिया, तो obviously if you look at compare the initial size और ये दूसरे size में, there was a reduction in it. If this reduction was suggestive of that we are trying to hit the tumor and we are doing something right. तो हमने जब उसको 3 cycle बाद PET scan किया, तो it showed कि उस there's interval decrease in the size and FDG avidity of the previous primary mass, and that pancreatic mass head has come down in size. Again, so now we move forward and we send a NGS report. जब हमारे पास NGS report आई, तो हमने ये देखा कि उसके अंदर MSI high था, and उसका tumor mutation burden was 13 mutations per megabase. Now she had other tumors also. She had other mutations also. But what we could really target was that she had a MSI high tumor. Now so this is where the personalization come in. Had we never done it, we would have never achieved this personalization, and this would have not been possible. Something like 3-4 years back, we would have probably sent the patient to die without even thinking, because it's a squamous cell pancreas. It cannot be operated upon. At a 61 year of age, somebody would have made her live for 6 months and then would have simply said, nothing can be done about it. Now with the MSI high tumor and with the tumor mutation burden 13, obviously it gives an indication to start a pembrolizumab, which is an immunotherapy. And immunotherapy can work wonders when somebody has a mutation, when somebody has a tumor which is responsive to immunotherapy. So yes, pembrolizumab is a costly drug, but then it can work wonders, and it did work wonders in this. It's a very so it's a safe medicine. It has its own side effects, it has its own adverse effects, but then they are well manageable. There is nothing which is out of the ordinary in that, and it's something which is doable. We gave her 3 doses of pembrolizumab, and if you look at the tumor, it started coming down even more in size. And then there was hardly any tumor left around it, and the entire tumor was gone. And if you look at the MRI picture of it, there is it has already gone. There is nothing which is there as a tumor which is left. And so this was the tumor to begin with, and this is the tumor after after six doses of pembrolizumab. So this is the point where she came to us, and we asked her to get operated, and obviously the discussion. So we asked her to get operated in this. Sadly, she didn't want to get operated because she was biased against it. So she underwent a radiotherapy, but then after radiotherapy also she came back to us. She has come back to us, and she's on follow-up now. But then she was a clearly operable case, and we had a great discussion about her. She had a bit of bias against surgery, but then I as a medical oncologist really requested her to get a surgery done, because it was an amazing response. She was almost cured of a cancer, and all she needed to done was get it removed. Anyway, that aside, so there are these stories, and these are not anecdotal stories now. These are if you ask any medical oncologist, everybody will have good number or fair number of these stories where they would have been proud of their innovative thinking and their acceptance of the NGS as a modality to treat patients and modality to know more about the cancer. So obviously tumor board discussions help you. When you put 5 brains together, there is always something which is better than one brain would put. So always be open to discussion is what my mantra is. And then NGS and genetic sequences, they have made inroads into the treatment of difficult cases, and there is no doubt about it. I have similar cases of pleural mesothelioma, which is doing wonders, and I have breast cancers, which is doing wonders. I think we have colorectal cancers. A young colon cancer patient जिसको standard chemotherapy सारी fail हो गई थी, and then we thought कि let's do a NGS, and turned out to be again MSI high. Chemotherapy दिया and it worked wonders. So it's not only that, somebody who has failed lung cancer treatment with osimertinib, जो कि standard chemotherapy है, उसका NGS करना, and then to find that there somebody has a RET mutation and a BRAF mutation, and then targeting the RET mutation. I think it's a very doable thing, and you're giving patients life at the cost of least toxicity. So as I told you, there are similar success stories in every tumor type. So I think that's from my side. I possibly would be open to taking any questions which is there. I think Meghna, you can take over from there, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, that was great. I think we covered quite a few important points about what it is to choose precision oncology. And yes, the doctors are. It's good to know that the doctors are going for precision oncology, NGS testing as a first line of action nowadays. And I think I can start off with the questions. So there's a person here asking, my mother had stage 4 fallopian tube cancer in Jan 2020. She had undergone surgery and chemotherapy with complete response in August 2021. She's currently undergoing maintenance therapy with bevacizumab. She had BRCA1 mutation. I want to know if she can take any other drug in terms of precision oncology.
So I think, yes, this is a classical case, and I think we have a robust data in terms of tubo-ovarian masses. Or this is basically a stage 4 tubo-ovarian.
Dr. Bhuvan?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So I think this is a classical case of a tubo-ovarian malignancy, which is stage 4, which is BRCA1 positive. And so there are 2-3 things which I would want to tell you in this. Yes, I think a BRCA or a PARP inhibitor such as olaparib should be considered in such a case, and there is a huge benefit in terms of it. The overall survival is not out yet, but then overall survival will come out in that. And everybody, each of us oncologists, we accept that olaparib or a PARP inhibitor would prolong the overall survival in such a case. So yes, I would sincerely recommend that you meet a medical oncologist and decide to go on a PARP inhibitor. Bevacizumab, it can be added along with the bevacizumab, or it can be added, it can be added independent also. So that discussion has to happen. And another thing is, I would like to know if she had a BRCA. This BRCA1 was a germline mutation or a somatic mutation. Because if it's a germline mutation, I would also like to tell her that it's good. It's good that you have gotten to know about it, and at least get a targeted testing done in the siblings and the progeny. And the second thing which I would want to know is obviously keep the breast under check, because the lady would be at higher risk of developing breast cancers also.
Yes, correct. So the next question is precision oncology and personalized cancer treatment the same?
So it is same for the, it's about how you take it. For me, yes, it is same. For the sake of practicality, call it same, because what we are doing in precision oncology is we are precisely finding out what gene is involved, and then we are targeting it along with it.
Correct.
So in a personalized cancer treatment, so basically what we are doing is, in terms of by the way of precisely finding out what gene is involved, we are personalizing the therapy. So that's the reason I probably will call it same.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Avishek. Yes, it was a wonderful talk. The question from Avishek is TMB and MSI, by extrapolating by sequencing limited genes data, and TMB or MSI by whole exome sequencing, which would be more preferred for accuracy?
I think you should also answer this along with me, because I will obviously answer this, but I think I would require your inputs to it more than my inputs to it. So generally, I probably do a whole exome sequencing. That's what I do, and I generally send it to the labs who are doing a whole exome sequencing. I don't send it to labs which are doing limited gene data, And I think that's my problem, and that mostly rules out most of the labs which are doing this. Most of the labs which are doing this limited gene TMP and MSI, and that's where I come in. So I think if you want to add on to it, I think I'm more than happy. Do you differ with me, or do you also agree with the same?
No, I agree with you, because I think in whole exome, that's where we cover most of the mutations that could be responsible. So when we try to limit our sequence to some genes, then the TMB and MSI values could also vary. And we may not be able to be as accurately treating a patient as we would like to.
So I think that's the primarily the answer for me.
Yes.
Any NGS has to be a whole exome sequencing is where I come. And mostly not only whole exome, I would want to involve the RNA sequencing also, not only the DNA sequencing. I think that's another point which I would want to go on to it.
Yes. How often would you say that RNA transcriptome analysis is important, and how often does it help?
So when it comes to certain tumor types in which RNAs, I have a targeted therapy for RNA. I would not limit myself to only DNA.
Correct.
For example, a lung cancer, if I have to find a MET mutation or MET fusion, yes, I would want to do a RNA transcriptome rather than a DNA, and then lead me nowhere. So I'm very clear that if I have a targeted therapy or any of the fusions, if you look at this, yes, most of the tumors, if I'm looking at the fusions and if I want the fusion data to it, I think I would have to take it. I have to take it at the level of RNA, not the level of DNA. And I think most of the fusions, most of the cancers, if with the new therapies coming in, obviously the fusions are also being targeted. So I think that's where I come in.
Yes, why not? Why limit yourselves to just DNA when you can have more options? Another question is, if a particular cancer has multiple driver mutations, in that case, are you going to charge targetable drugs for all the mutations or one at a time, depending on the response?
So I think that's a very fair question, and that's a very good question. So for example, EGFR and ALK, I think these are this is the most common scenario which you come across. Yes. And similarly, if you come across, again, I had a lung cancer post-osimertinib who had progressed on post-osimertinib, had both RET fusions as well as BRAF mutations. Okay. So what I did was, first of all, look at the availability of the targeted agents, and if there are both targeted agents available, then the second thing comes is the profile of the patient. And I think it gets a bit confusing as far as the EGFR and ALK is concerned, because it's for example, in that lung patient which I'm talking about, I chose to go with the RET inhibitor rather than the BRAF inhibitor, because the RET inhibitors seem like a better. When you look at the entire crosstalks between the pathways, it looked like a targetable gene in terms of the crosstalks, because the downstream pathways involved were more of the RET mutation than of the BRAF mutations. Mm-hmm. Second thing is, when you look at the EGFR and ALK, yes, the story is a bit confusing. I possibly would start with EGFR and then add ALK to it if it is not responding, and I think that's where I commit to. But yes, I do agree the story gets a bit confusing when you have two targetable mutations. I generally look at the availability of the target of the therapy, and the profile of the patient.
Yeah. Adding to that question, in such a case where there is a mutation that has been found that can be targetable, and if there is an immunotherapy that you can take, what would you prefer? I mean, would you give preference to immunotherapy?
It's a targetable mutation. There is most of the, so if you're talking about the lung, then there is no doubt we obviously use the targeted therapy. Mm-hmm. But then what cancer types are we talking about? Because if this talk is for including all cancer types, I think yes, other cancer type, for example, so if somebody has a high MSI, I think I would prefer that as a targeted therapy over the other targeted therapies. I think that's something which cannot be left about. Mm-hmm. But if you can give me an example, we can discuss about it. But then in lung cancer, obviously the answer is very clear that you choose the targeted therapy over the immunotherapy. Baki, for example, if you're looking at the uterine cancers, I think again there is a role of immunotherapy.
Yes.
So I think it depends upon what target are we talking about, how easy is the targeted therapy, and I think there's a lot which is supposed to be decided about that, rather than suppose you're talking about a breast cancer and let's say somebody has a high PD-L1 and somebody has a high MSI or a high TMB, for example, and then they also have a HRR gene involved. So I would possibly add, a platinum with immunotherapy is what I would do. Again, in my mesothelioma case, the patient had I don't remember the mutation, but the pathway involved was sensitive to taxane, and the patient had a high TMB. So I think I chose to go with the taxane plus immuno, and that the patient did well on. I think he's receiving his 18th dose of pembro or something, but then he's doing reasonably well.
Okay, thank you, sir. So let's say there are two primaries of cancer. Do you suggest that both the primary tumors are being tested, or how do you go about it?
So in terms of metastatic disease, or in terms of
two primaries. So it's, let's say it was first seen in breast, and then let's say there's another tumor that you've seen in pancreas. Do you look for what if it doesn't seem like a metastasis? I think this could be a rare possibility, but just saying.
Fair enough. So there are two scenarios which you're talking about. First scenario is if it's a second primary, and the second thing, if even if it's a metastasis, if it is a metastasis, would you do a repeat NGS or not? So I think my answer would be NGS would help tell you whether the patient had a two primary or what is a single disease. Okay. So I had a similar patient who had a disease in the lung as well as in the pancreas. Now, for a lung going to pancreas is obviously known and heard of, but then it is not common.
Yes.
And then also he had a lot of abdominal nodes, and obviously he had COPD, and then we did the biopsy, and we could not, and it was TTF1 negative, but it was also CA19.9, CA19.9 negative, and we couldn't decipher whether it was a primary, it was a primary of the pancreas or a primary of the lung. So obviously, as the lung goes, taxane works in both. So we started the patient on a gem-nab-paclitaxel, I think, or gem-nab-paclitaxel or paclitaxel, I don't exactly remember. But then after that, when the therapy failed, the first thing which I did was to send an NGS, and I think I wanted to send an NGS because I wanted to know the genes which are involved in it and which tumor type which it will favor. I think that's the one thing which I wanted to know. And obviously, we also wanted to know whether the immunotherapy will work or not, because immunotherapy, if it works, it will work in both. And so, to answer your question concisely, if it is possible, and if you guys will not charge me double, I would like to send the NGS for both. And if you guys would charge me double, then again, I would like to send the both, because I would like to. So I think if it's two primary, I'm very clear that I will send the NGS from both the sides. I rather am doing that for a patient who a breast malignancy. Again, it's a luminal B breast malignancy, which is which is rapidly progressive. So I'm doing a ER/PR HER2 at the breast and as well as the axilla, just to find out if there is a difference between the ER/PR HER2 of both the sides or not. And if there is a difference between ER/PR HER2 of both the sides, I would send an NGS of both the sides. So I think that's where I am looking at, because I would want to know any targetable mutation possible or not. How will I use the data? Don't ask me that. Once it comes, we will sit down with it, we will look at it, but then that's how you go.
Okay, in case of the primaries being from two different sites, and let's say we find different mutations in both of them, and for each of them, if the mutations are specific to those tumors, how would we go about it?
So again, I think it would be looked at what mutation are we talking about, and I think most of suppose, for example, we're talking about a TKI. I think a TKI, a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, has a good role in quite a few downstream pathways. So if I am supposed to be giving, let's say, a lenvatinib and immunotherapy, possibly I expect lenvatinib to work. So we look at this multi TKI inhibitors, multi-tyrosine kinase inhibitors, which kind of block multiple pathways than a single pathway. So possibly I would end up choosing a immuno with a lenva if I find that there are targetable TKIs. But then I can also stimulate, or I can increase if I can increase the tumor mutation burden, if I can increase the immunogenicity of the tumor, possibly that what I would do. So I would try to find a middle path. I am sure there's a middle part to it, and then you end up choosing the drugs which are which are more which probably inhibit more pathways than a single pathway. Yes, it is involved with it is associated with higher adverse effect, but then we are talking about the rare situation. We are talking about a situation where there are two primaries,
Yes, yes.
there is a diffuse metastasis. Obviously, you need to inhibit as much as you can.
Okay. So there's another question. Do you think that doing comprehensive genomic testing is the first go will be more helpful for better treatment planning and getting overall survival benefit rather than starting off with systemic treatment?
So I think that's again a very good question, and I have done that today. And as I told you, again, similarly, a triple negative BRCA, a triple negative breast failed, finished her adjuvant chemotherapy in December, and finished her adjuvant in December, and finished her radiation in with ACT, that adjuvant chemotherapy, and finished her radiation in this April, in March or April. And I, the triple negative 52-year-old female. I obviously the choice between eribulin and gemcitabine carboplatin was these were the two agents which you choose in a second line, in a second line triple negative. I have sent it today because because the data which is coming in is that the earlier the use. So the reason for me sending the NGS early is, first I would know if the patient has a BRCA to it. If the patient has a BRCA to it, I would want to use the platinums more. That's one. The second thing is, if obviously with a dual gemcitabine carboplatin, there's a high risk that you will be associated with thrombocytopenia. So there is this fear in the back of my head that the patient may not tolerate the therapy because of thrombocytopenia. So I may have to shift also. That's the second part of it also. And the third part of is, with the data coming in, that the sooner you use immunotherapy, the better the response rate, or the better the survival it is. So if the patient has a higher mutation burden or a high PDL1 or MSI, I would want to use, or SP142, I would like to use in the immunotherapy early as compared to late. So I think that's where these are my reasons of pulling the NGS early as far as late, especially in aggressive disease. I may want to put it off till the second line, but then let's look at it. What is the harm out of it? The harm out of it is that you may have to repeat an NGS later down the line when the disease progresses. I think that's the extra financial burden to it. But then you're doing something which is better for the patient. So I would do it this way. And that would be my thinking to it is. I'm open to discussion about it, but then I don't know, if probably this is what I would do. And that is my reason for pulling on the NGSs early than late.
Yes. Is there any role of immunotherapy in metastatic ovarian cancer?
Again, so immunotherapy per se, ovarian cancer are not much immunogenic, but then again, so if I am, so this is one therapy in metastatic ovarian cancer where I would like to look at the BRCA more than the use of immunotherapy. And I think I would look at the ovarian cancers in detail in terms of, I think the entire story of HRDs and the entire story of LOHs, I think the story has changed entirely in terms of ovarian cancer, not in terms of immunotherapy, but in the terms whether the patient has a homologous repair gene defect or not. So I would rather want to target the HRR pathway rather than the TMB pathway or the mutation pathway. So I would study the tumor in detail in terms of the repair genes, and I would want to target them rather than immunotherapy. But then if they are none, obviously then we look at the alternative therapies. But then that's where I would start.
There is a patient of lung cancer with bone metastasis stage 4. Will you go for IHC and then for molecular or NGS? Or is there a directory for molecular?
Let me just read that. Doctor, there's a patient of CA lung with bone metastasis stage 4. Will you go for IHC and then go for molecular or NGS? So let's talk about how you go about evaluating a CA lung. The first thing which you go for a CA lung is whether to know whether it is adeno or squamous, which obviously is done on a basis of IHC. Okay. Once you have done it on the basis of IHC, and once I've formed an opinion that this is adeno, because if it is lung, then if it is squamous, then the story is entirely different. Okay. If it is adeno, then you look at it whether the patient is smoker or not. If the patient is smoker, then if the patient is non-smoker, for example, there is a high chance that you will probably find a EGFR ALK you probably find a EGFR or ALK. And
Yes.
I'd rather go for a PCR, EGFR by PCR rather than by a sending a NGS. So if the patient, this is the way I approach a CA lung. I'm not saying this is the perfect way, but this is the way I approach it. If the patient is a non-smoker, the first thing I would want to do, I would want to do a rapid PCR and want to see if the patient has a EGFR mutation or not, and a ALK by IHC. I think within 2 days or within 3-4 days, we'll get an idea whether the patient has a EGFR mutation or a ALK mutation or not. And if these are negative, ALK, but basically what you do is you do 3 things first. You do EGFR, ALK, and ROS. I think these all 3 can be done by IHC. If all these are negative, I probably will send the sample for NGS. However, if the patient is smoker, then I would probably want to send the sample for. I would want to send the sample for NGS directly, because the chances of finding the targetable mutations are lesser as compared to non-smokers, and I would want to look at the entire lung panel rather than just the 3. So that's where I come.
Okay. HRR and HRD, are they same or different?
Okay. So HRR are. So I think this one is a score. So human homologous repair. What the full name? Homologous repair defect is HRD, and homologous repair recombination. What is full form HRR?
Homologous recombination.
Homologous recombination repair. So basically, they are essentially the same things. Is just that in the way the studies are coming in and the way Myriad developed it, they wanted to give a scoring to the HRR, and that's the reason they came up with HRD score or homologous repair defect score to it. And there are 3 parts to the HRD defect. There is a loss of heterozygosity, there is telomere length, and then there is one more which I don't component. But then that's where HRD comes in. Basically, HRD is nothing but I think it's a more systematic way of telling what HRR genes are involved or not, and also what implication do they have in the terms of your therapy which we can give you. So I think the way I would want to put HR and HRD is, let me just form a sentence. So what you do with HRR is what HRD will tell you. So if somebody has a HRR defect, and what do you make out of it and how do you go about it is what possibly HRD is.
Yes, that makes sense. If NGS fails on tumor tissue and rebiopsy is not an option, would you go for a liquid biopsy?
And I think I possibly would. How come the tumor tissue was taken out the first time if it is rebiopsy is not a possibility is what I meant. But yes, answer is it may. I may give a second thought, but eventually I'll end up going for a liquid biopsy, what it is. But then I think my problem would be that liquid biopsy, if the patient has a tumor tissue and the NGS is failed, I possibly would have started treatment in the meanwhile. It will never happen that I will sit on a tumor tissue and sit for the NGS report to come in and then change the treatment. So my problem would be that if I'm treating somebody and if I send a liquid biopsy, there is a good chance the ctDNA may not be found and it may not be correct representation of the tumor. So I may possibly continue with the same therapy and send a ctDNA or send a liquid biopsy if the disease recur before I start the second line. That's where I would have approached it, rather than doing a liquid biopsy while the patient. See, it's very rare that you sit for 4 weeks. Generally, TAT for a NGS to come around is 3 to 4 weeks.
Yes.
So it's very difficult for me to sit on a tumor tissue, sit on a patient who has a metastatic disease for 3 to 4 weeks. And in the meantime, if I started a treatment, I'm not of a robust opinion, or I don't have a robust data in which the liquid biopsy would be correct representative, and would I be able to find the circulating tumor DNA enough for me to form an opinion.
Correct. Yes. How important is clinical findings, general physical health conditions of the patient, and other such data for precision oncology? Or is genetic data of a patient alone sufficient for driving precision medicine?
So again, as I told you, the way I go about the way I go about understanding cancer or understanding the treatment for cancer is the name of the disease, the stage of the disease, and the fitness of the patient.
Yes.
So yes, when it comes to the fitness of the patient, when you do the precision oncology, when you do a personalization of therapy, certain so somebody who's in a borderline, I may treat and I may not treat, and somebody whom I have this fear that this person will not be able to pull off a cytotoxic chemotherapy. Obviously, if I find a targeted therapy option, I would obviously be treating the patient. But then, so I had a patient who had a gross pleural effusion, hardly been able, she was unable to lie down flat, saturation of 80, 82, and it was very difficult to, it was very difficult to even treat her properly. Even so, again, a female with, she had a lung mass, female with lung malignancy. Again, so what thing which we did was, and again, when we did the biopsy, it was a TTF1 negative. So we all again would stuck you. What should we do because it's a TTF1 negative? The thing which we did was I think we made a cell block out of her pleural fluid, and I think it was pleural fluid cell block or it was a tissue, and we sent it for EGFR rapid PCR. She came out to be EGFR rapid PCR. So similarly, had this been not an option, I think treating her with a paclitaxel carboplatin would have been a difficult job, rather than now she's surviving on a single one pill a day osimertinib. She comes to me walking. So I think that's the fun of finding a targetable mutation. So to answer this thing concisely, or to say it properly, general physical health of the condition is important. But then when you talk about precision oncology, there are multiple lines of therapy which open up even in poor health patients, which probably would not have happened had we didn't go looking for it.
Correct. Is there any treatment change for germline HRR genes and somatic HRR genes, or is it the same?
So again, the data for the germline HRR genes is it's not as robust, because the somatic HRR genes is where the HRD score came in. And so the germline HRR genes, I possibly for a germline HRR gene, are you aware of the germline HRR gene study? I possibly, again, I would, if it comes to the germline HRR gene, I may possibly include the patient and give them a PARP inhibitor as a offline. But then for me, the somatic HRR genes which made the HRD score would possibly be a better indicator for the success or a failure of a therapy than a germline HRR is what I come in. And I think the last trial. So when I think in the prostatic trial of olaparib, they did do a germline setup. So I'm not exactly clear of the germline HRR, the role of germline HRR in inclusion of the PARP inhibitors. But then I don't think the data is as robust as a somatic HRR, is what I would say. But then this is where I come.
Yes, if it's a BRCA mutant tumor, then yes, there are PARP inhibitors.
We're talking about non-BRCA HRR. So when you talk about
yes.
HRR, obviously if it's a BRCA, then the story is as possible.
PARP inhibitors.
But if it's a non-BRCA HRR, I think the data is not as robust, and
yes.
I think somatic HRR has a more HRD score better than germline
HRR. In case you have a rebiopsy option, would you prefer to get the tissue sample to be sent for NGS again in RNA later solution the next time, which might reduce the tumor tissue failure?
I think this you will have to answer. So you'll have to tell me what is the difference between what is the difference of failure between a standard formalin solution or an RNA later solution is what I would want to. And that's what he's talking about. When you send it for, so when you send the sample, we generally send the sample in blocks to you, right?
Yes.
So would you prefer, let me just ask, would you prefer the sample to be sent to you in a formalin, or would you prefer the sample to be sent in formalin or a block with service RNA later solution?
See, I know of blocks in the FFP's solution, so I know of that. I don't think I'd be qualified enough to answer about the RNA later solution.
I think I'm not. So Yes, if you're writing the solution, I'll probably go and read and find the, so possibly I will look at the success rate of sending it an RL letter solution. I'm not aware of the success rate as compared to a standard FFP.
I think we've run out. We've run out of time. These are the questions. I think we had some really interesting questions. I hope we've covered as many topics for our audience as possible. And I think, okay, we'll be open to more questions in our next session of webinars. I would like to thank you, Dr. Bhuvan, for taking your time out on the weekend for this webinar for us. And I would like to thank Hitesh and Kshitij and Phobase Care for this opportunity to moderate this session. Can I have any opening lines from you? Sorry, closing lines.
Thank you. Thank you, Phobase Care. And, me and Satish go a long way back. I think me and he have grown up together. So it's always a pleasure, talking to him. And I think so. We had a good company in school. Anyway, so thank you, Phobase Care, and thank you, Meghna, for hosting such a, moderating such a beautiful session. And love to be at the, at the service of Phobase Care always. I think it's an amazing organization, and you guys are doing really, really good job at it, I'm sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, again for your time, and have a great weekend. Thank you, Dr. Bhuvan, again.